Hi, my name is Walt. I have lived in Ramona for 30 years. I am also a founding member and board of director member of Sustainable Ramona. Sustainable Ramona is interested in working on a variety of fundamental issues like water conservation, energy efficiency, air quality, and so forth. However, in this video, we will be focused on the power grid. We will present the Sustainable Ramona vision of how Ramona can take advantage of the technology changes that are in our future. The economics of renewable energy have passed the tipping point. Converting to renewable energy is now a business decision. Much like the introduction of the internet, every aspect of our economy will be affected. Transportation, food production, energy management, home construction, the energy grid, agriculture, and so on. Most of the changes will be accomplished by early in the next decade. Falling behind will affect home values and our general prosperity. The most important decision will be the choice of a utility. We need leadership and we need a plan. Let's listen to one of the most important thought leaders of our time, Tony Seba. He has authored numerous books and videos on the impacts of new technology on our economy and society.
I want to take you into the future of transportation and energy. But before I do that, I want to take you into the past. This is New York City in 1900, Easter parade. There is one car in this picture in a sea of horses. We used horses as our main means of transportation, all of humanity, for thousands of years. There is one car in this picture there. In 13 years, there was one horse in that picture. Can anyone see it? Essentially, transportation flipped from all horse, -1, to all cars, -1, in just 13 years. 13 years. And this is more than 100 years ago. And as you know, technology is changing even more rapidly now. And this is how quickly disruptions happen. 13 years, that's all it took. If you had invested in a horse barn in 1900, basically you lost all your money.
We need to learn from the past. If we look at the horses to autos example of the previous video clip, we can view the current electric grid to be like horses over 110 years ago. The automobile in this analogy becomes the renewable energy supply of the future. We want to introduce the idea of community microgrids. The key takeaway from this illustration of a community microgrid can be seen from the energy production, storage, transmission, and energy management. Unlike the current state of affairs, it is 100% renewable energy and is entirely produced and controlled locally.
Now is the time to reimagine our electric systems. One way to power into the future is with microgrids. Across the U.S., small-scale power networks called microgrids are emerging as the smart solution to our failing national grid system. By integrating multiple renewable power sources like solar, wind, and battery storage, microgrids can maximize efficiency and ensure uninterrupted power. What's more, these revolutionary systems can address climate change and help us transition from fossil fuels to clean energy without being disruptive.
We need microgrids today because our grid is brittle and it needs to be brought into the 21st century where we're facing real climate risks, real disruptions. We have a pathway to clean energy and to distributed energy that microgrids enable.
How does a microgrid differ from the central grid? Our current central electric grid is the interconnected wires and poles and power plants that deliver electricity to homes and businesses across the country. It is completely interdependent. If a transmission line in one community fails, other communities can suffer. A microgrid, using locally sourced renewable energy, serves a small geographic area, like a campus or a neighborhood or a city. It can be either completely independent or work in sync with the current central electric grid. Eventually, a statewide and nationwide series of microgrids can replace our central, unreliable, and inefficient grid system. Because they rely on locally produced renewable energy, microgrids can run independently, sometimes called islanding, in the event of wildfires, floods, or hurricanes, or any other major disruption.
A microgrid is basically a mini version of the larger grid, except that it's smarter, it's cleaner, it's more efficient, and it's tailored to meet the local community's needs using their local resources.
The thing about microgrids is that because they're deployed at the local level, they also provide high-paying, good quality jobs in the communities that need them.
According to a 2021 economic impact report by Guidehouse, microgrids powered by renewable energy will generate nearly 500,000 new jobs, 72 billion in GDP growth, and 146 billion in business sales by 2030.
Microgrids also address one of the biggest inefficiencies of the centralized system, which is moving power from one place to another.
With the central electric grid, significant power is lost when it has to travel miles and miles across transmission lines. Microgrids are more efficient because energy is created very close to where it is used, which, in addition to efficiency, also means savings to consumers. By some estimates, as much as 15% of the power generated by power plants is lost by the time that it reaches the consumer. Society pays the price for that in the form of higher energy costs and environmental harm. Where do microgrids exist today?
There are already a few microgrids in Ramona. A couple of our Sustainable Ramona members are already energy independent. This video provides a brief look at one of those systems.
Hi there. Ramona citizen Rob Llewellyn here, and today I'd like to tell you about my own microgrid. Behind me you'll see a ground mount as opposed to a roof mounted solar array consisting of 27 360 watt panels, and they are generating 9 3/4 kilowatt hours DC power. They run about 125 feet to my house and connect to a 7.2 kilowatt inverter. I have a dual system, and I will show you the other portion of my solar system in a bit. This is an oversized system by about 127%, which means I have additional panel beyond what the inverter is rated at. And this allows for maximum solar generation for a longer period in the middle of the day, each day. So it's a much more efficient system. The next part of the system I wanted to show you is the inverter. This is a 7.6 kilowatt hour solar edge inverter coming underground from my panels and from the inverter into a sub panel box, which then travels to my main panel box at the other end of the house. I mentioned that my solar system was in two parts. This is the second part, the east system. This is composed of 14 360 watt panels. And to garner the solar production, we have 2 Tesla Powerwalls. Here is the charge portion that we plug into the Tesla. So far, we have only been using a plug plugged into a wall socket, which goes into the car. And then I will be adding this Tesla 240 volt charger, which will charge at up to 48 amps. The one we're using now charges at 12 amps, and so far that's been plenty. It just doesn't charge as quickly. This is our electric car. This happens to be a Tesla Y model, and we're very happy with it to date. And we're going on 3,500, 4,000 miles with this car. To date, we haven't spent anything at all for fuel. Everything has been provided by the electricity that we're generating. This is the charge port. And every time we come home, we charge it up. So there's a layout of our solar system, from harvesting the sun with solar panels and storing them with our Powerwall batteries and plugging them directly into our EV. And this is a very self-contained system with our own microgrid, our own personal microgrid. It's very efficient, and we're very happy with it. Thank you.
Obviously, most of us won't be in a position to address climate change like Rob and a few others have done. One of the most important microgrids in Ramona is at the airport. When the power is turned off during major Santa Ana wind events, the fire crews can still fully operate in their firefighting efforts. UCSD has a microgrid for their entire campus since prior to the 2011 electrical blackout. Some homes and businesses lost power for up to 13 hours. UCSD kept running when the rest of the county was without power. Other microgrids are located at Cameron Corners near Campo, Borrego Springs, and Shelter Valley near Julian. There are numerous microgrids to be found across the United States. However, we'd like to focus on one in particular. Here's an excerpt of a video from WPTV News from last year.
When you fight Mother Nature and you don't do it right, Mother Nature is going to win every time.
It sounded like a freight train. It was literally like a freight train, and it didn't stop.
As Hurricane Ian made landfall on Florida's west coast,
This lake was raging.
Anthony Grande helplessly watched on from his backyard.
It looked like an ocean. It looked like it was five-foot waves out here.
Roughly 20 miles northeast of hard-hit downtown Fort Myers.
It didn't look real. It looked like something out of a science fiction movie.
We got 100 plus mile an hour winds up to a gust of over 150 miles an hour, and it lasted literally for 8 to 10 hours.
And despite the winds and flooding rains, did you sustain a lot of damage?
We got very little damage. Down trees, a rip on the lanai screen, and that's it.
At Babcock Ranch,
Through a Cat 4 hurricane, the lights never went out.
We never lost power. We never lost internet. We never lost water.
Sid Kitson, a retired professional football player, is the developer of the 1,800-acre community
What I'd really like to do is get off the grid almost completely.
that he proudly calls America's first sustainable solar-powered town.
I think this is the future for development, not just here, but around the country.
Why don't we see more communities like this?
That's a great question. Maybe because there wasn't a need before.
This is a sea of solar panels. They stretch for as far as the eye can see, nearly 700,000 of them, creating enough clean energy to power nearly 30,000 homes. The solar facility and battery storage system, which is tied to the grid and is owned by Florida Power and Light, not only powers the growing community of nearly 2,000 homes, but also feeds the region. An FP&L spokesperson told us it was not the solar power generation that kept the lights on for this storm, but the hardened grid. Kitson says Hurricane Ian's winds didn't dislodge a single solar panel.
We're not going to see any power lines anywhere, are we?
No power lines.
Where are they?
Underground. You're walking on top of them.
We have identified 4 major reasons why Ramona should work towards getting its own microgrid. First is energy economics. So let's turn to Tony Seba once more to explain the economics of the changing world of energy.
Let's talk about the coming disruption of energy. So start with technology cost curves. Solar is the cheapest form of energy generation on the planet, unsubsidized. Solar today is the cheapest source of energy in history. Nothing else is as cheap as solar today, right? This is why we've seen solar capacity grow by thousands of percent in just a decade. And today solar is so cheap that the total costs of solar are lower than just the operating costs of coal, nukes, oil, or gas generation. That's today. So even if you get that gas power plant for free, the costs of running that power plant are higher than all the cost of solar. And that's happening today. What do you think is going to happen to coal, nuke, oil, and gas? They're disrupted, right? They can't compete. For purely economic reasons, solar is already disrupting everything else.
To underscore what Tony Seba said, solar panels are the cheapest form of energy creation in the history of the world. This chart tracks how costs have changed over the last 12 years or so. The difference is significant. Solar power is over 37% cheaper than natural gas. Here is the key renewable energy economic advantage over fossil fuels: the long fossil fuel supply chains. The significance is this: at every step of the way, from the oil derrick to the gas pump, fossil fuel energy is burned to deliver a continuous flow of energy to the consumers. Now let's discuss the second reason Ramona should set up its own microgrid: natural resources. First is our climate. We have about 28% more sunny days than the national average. The second crucial resource Ramona has is open land. By open land, we are referring to land available to install solar panels. However, we're not interested in taking any land away from agriculture. Agriculture is a key part of the Ramona economy. Instead, we want to promote the use of renewable energy to help our agricultural industry. Here's an excerpt from a video on agrivoltaics.
And one of the ideas gaining a lot of interest right now is to combine food production with energy production in a concept known as agrophotovoltaics or agrivoltaics, or just APV for short. There's a strong clue in the name, of course, and sure enough, in very basic terms, it means putting solar panels in a field where crops are also grown. So how does it work in practice, and what do we gain from doing it? Well, it turns out there's a limit to how much sun any individual plant can actually use. It's something known as the light saturation point. Any extra light received beyond that point makes no difference at all to the plant's photosynthesis. All it does is make the plant sweat, which makes it more thirsty. So by strategically placing solar panels directly above a crop growing area, it's theoretically possible to precisely regulate how much sunlight reaches each plant, so that they've got the optimum level for maximum growth with minimum water loss. All the excess sunlight that would otherwise be wasted on the plants would then be captured on the upper side of the solar panels to generate energy. And if the panels are raised up high enough above the ground, then livestock, farm workers, and even agricultural machinery can all operate very happily in the cool shade beneath the canopy. And it's not a one-way street either. It's a mutually beneficial, symbiotic relationship. As the plants grow beneath the panels, they help to keep the panels cool. Ironically, solar panels don't actually like getting hot. It reduces their operating efficiency. So anything that can draw heat off them will help to make the panels more productive. According to a study by Oregon State University, panels positioned correctly above plants can produce as much as 10% more electricity. And that electrical energy can be used to run the farm with electric tractors and equipment, and to power precision agricultural technology that helps further reduce water usage. All of that obviously reduces the running costs for the farm, and any surplus energy can be stored in battery banks or sent to the grid for consumer use. So you're effectively using the sunlight twice to grow cash crops and to generate a second income stream from the solar power generation. And the OSU study also calculated that converting just 1% of American farmland to agrivoltaics could meet the entire US national renewable energy target, not to mention saving a significant amount of water and creating sustainable long-term food production systems. France is already getting involved, led by the winemaking industry. SunAgri, a subsidiary of French solar developer SunR, has installed a viticulture agrivoltaic system in the wine-growing area of Pierlon in Hérault in southeastern France as part of a programme to test how agrivoltaics perform in specific crop cultures. The project is running in partnership with the local Chamber of Agriculture as part of a programme supported by the French Environment and Energy Management Agency. In a recent interview with PV magazine, a SunAgri spokesperson said vines are among the crops most affected by the effects of climate change, so it's essential that they be at the heart of our experiments. 1,000 square metres of vines in the test area were planted with the black Grenache red wine grape. 600 square metres were covered by a system of 280 panels with a generation capacity of 84 kilowatts. The panels were mounted 4.2 metres, or about 14 feet, above ground, and are remotely controlled by an artificial intelligence algorithm that SunAgri have been developing for more than a decade. The algorithm determines the ideal tilt of the panels based on available sunshine, the water requirements of viticulture, the growth model of the crop, as well as soil quality and weather conditions. And in the event of extreme climatic hazards like drought, heatwave, hail, frost or heavy rain, the system positions the panels to protect the crops. Water demand was reduced by as much as 34% in the PV sheltered vines, thanks to that reduction in evapotranspiration that we looked at earlier. There are some challenges that could stand in the way of widespread use of agrivoltaics though, as this recent research paper by the German Fraunhofer Institute points out, not least of which is the higher initial capital costs compared to conventional ground-mounted PV installations. Those costs are mainly due to the much taller support systems used for the modules, as well as the need for site-specific system design. But the report also found that compared to other renewable energy sources today, APV overall looks quite competitive. The industry comparison standard known as levelized cost of electricity, or LCOE, comes out at 7 to 12 euro cents per kilowatt hour for agrivoltaics. That is higher than the ground-mounted systems, but it's already comparable with small rooftop PV systems. And as a bit of a bonus, freestanding APV installations also provide a valuable habitat for other plants and wildlife. With careful management, the extra protection from excess harmful sunlight improves the health of the soil and increases the level of nutrients, creating important ecosystems for plants and insects, which in turn increases the availability of food for field animals as well as birds and bats.
The study also found a positive effect on berry weight, beneficial effect on the organoleptic quality of the wines. Anthocyanin content was higher, but alcohol strength remained at the same level. Which brings us to the third reason for a Ramona microgrid, San Diego Gas and Electric. Here is a short video from a CBS 8 report.
San Diegans have told us their bills are getting higher and higher with no explanation as to why. CBS 8's Steve Price dug into the issue today and explains why our rates are so high.
San Diegans shocked by their power bills, and that got us wondering, how do SDG&E's rates compare with other cities? And what we found is that we pay the highest rates in the entire country. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, San Diegans paid an average of 36.5 cents per kilowatt hour last December. LA residents paid 33% less than us, and those living in Riverside County got an even better deal.
The price per kilowatt is the highest in the country. San Diego's even outpassing Hawaii, which is not even on the mainland.
Edward Lopez with the Utilities Consumers Action Network is right. Hawaii's average rate was almost 3 cents less per kilowatt hour. SDG&E is owned by Sempra, a publicly traded company, and in their most recent year-to-year figures, they reported a profit of over $9 billion. But SDG&E recently raised our rates again.
The profitability, the return that SDG&E gives back to Sempra is incredible.
SDG&E is not allowed to simply raise our rates on their own. They have to get permission from the California Public Utilities Commission. But Lopez says that commission seems to always put politics over people.
UCAN's been around for at least 3 decades. And during that time, we constantly argued rates are too high, program costs are too high, profits are too high. But yet the commission never really approves to go backwards.
In a statement to CBS 8, SDG&E said they understand customers' frustration, adding, while there is never a good time to raise rates, we remain focused on building a safe, climate-resilient, and reliable grid that enables our region to reach our sustainability goals, which leaves us with this chart from the CPUC. It shows SDG&E's rate increases starting in 2013 are expected to outpace inflation by almost 70% by 2030. Steve Price, CBS 8.
This chart confirms what the video showed. California has the highest rates of all 50 states and the District of Columbia. This chart demonstrates that over the last 6 years, SDG&E has been raising its rates much faster than the other California utilities. All 3 utilities have increased rates at a faster pace than the Consumer Price Index. These utilities are a key source of inflation, directly to consumers and then indirectly to food stores and other businesses.
SDG&E customers are amped up about their utility bills, and at CBS 8, we're keeping an eye on rising rates.
SDG&E in its current general rate case is asking for more than $3 billion in what's called the revenue requirement.
In its application, SDG&E wants ratepayers to help fund increases in revenue for the company, for a total revenue increase over 4 years of $3.9 billion.
So let me package it up for you. It's not realistic to expect electricity rates to ever go down because SDG&E is a for-profit corporation. Their financial responsibility is to the Sempra shareholders. Sempra and SDG&E's executive compensation includes stock options. SDG&E owns the electrical infrastructure. And most importantly, SDG&E holds a monopoly on energy in San Diego County. Which brings us to the most important reason for a Ramona microgrid, the future. The trends are clear. Eventually, Ramona will be powered mostly by renewable resources. EV prices will drop, putting more EVs on the road. Fossil fuels will get more expensive due to international markets. Residents will continue to have long commutes. Governments will promote electrification of homes. SDG&E will continue to raise rates. It's time to ask the $3 billion question. How long will it take for the economy to transition into full electrification with the cost of electricity being so high? We are at a crossroads and the economic changes ahead of us. We can choose the path to prosperity or fall behind. Sustainable Ramona would like to offer an alternative idea to our community: affordable electricity. There are numerous alternative energy storage technologies. The best technology might be the oldest, pumped hydro.
Pumped hydro is the most efficient large-scale storage system, a technology that provides stability to the electrical system and can generate large amounts of clean energy with fast response time. Pumping stations are large batteries that store energy to use it when it is most needed. They have 2 reservoirs at different altitudes that allow water to be stored at times of lower demand and to take advantage of it to generate electricity at peak times. During off-peak hours, typically weekday and weekend nights, excess generation capacity is used to pump the water from the lower level reservoir to the upper one by means of a hydraulic pump. which carries it through a pipeline. The upper reservoir therefore acts as a giant battery to store the water, which will be converted into 100% clean electricity when necessary. When the water in the upper reservoir is used to generate electricity by the hydraulic turbine, it falls back to the lower reservoir and the process begins again. Pumped storage hydropower plants are essential for the proper function of the electrical system and represent an integrated solution in the environment for energy storage.
Fortunately, there's just such a project in consideration. This would be at the San Vicente Reservoir in a partnership with San Diego County Water Authority and the City of San Diego. This project has the potential to store energy for 135,000 homes. And it's only 17 miles from Ramona. Sustainable Ramona has a vision. First, the San Diego County Water Authority builds the San Vicente Energy Storage Facility. Ramona builds a solar wind-powered microgrid and utility. The Ramona Electricity Utility builds underground power cable system. And using an agrivoltaic strategy, Ramona's farms minimize water usage, improve crop yields, and receive solar royalties. So what are the benefits of this strategy? Ramona's energy expenses stay within the community and its economy. Ramona's residences, businesses, and farm community get cheaper energy. Ramona's commuters can power their EVs from home or community power stations. Ramona's utility sells cheaper energy to surrounding San Diego County. And Ramona frees itself from the economic control of the SDG&E transmission lines and reduces wildfire risk. Thank you for watching our video. If you have questions or comments, you can check out our website or our Facebook group page. There you can view articles and videos and offer your comments and questions.